Good evening and welcome to Manuscript Monday. I'm Brian Cathanis, your host, and we have a wonderful guest tonight, someone that our Manuscript Society people know, and many folks from the Society of American Archivists know, and everybody from Indiana University knows Mr. Bradley Cook. We got a lot to cover tonight. We're going to keep it to an hour just like we promised. We'll give people another 30 seconds, which gets us right to 8 o'clock, and we'll be all set. We'll do a little logistics and we'll do a little of that. And I see a lot of folks tuning in for us tonight, which is just delightful. Let's see who's here. Look at all the people who's here. I see a lot of Manuscript Society members. I see a lot of folks from the International Society of Appraisers. I see some friends and family. I see the world famous Leon Kastner, famous auctioneer radio show host and my business partner. Judy Merritt's here. Judy, I don't know where you are. Judy's somewhere around all around the world, running somewhere there. Al Ottens, who was our guest from way back when, just last month, talking about General Rawlins, and we'll get to questions and things. Hey, Craig Sperling. All right. You're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. It's great. Good deal. So we're recording this webinar, just so you know, it will be archived. So if you don't want to ask a question live, because you don't want to be recorded, that's perfectly fine. If you do, when we get to questions, we'll be able to do that and get things going. And we're going to just kind of fire it right up. So you should be seeing the screen that says the Manuscript Society with Bradley's name on it. Is that the screen that looks like it's up, Brad?
Yeah, I can see it.
Good deal. So welcome. Tonight it's Manuscript Monday. We do it every Monday, unless there's a holiday on a Monday, then we have Manuscript Monday on a Tuesday. This one's called Etiquette Your Mother Never Taught You, visiting special collections, museums, and rare book rooms. A lot of this will be a friendly reminder. Some of you will go, I already know that, but hopefully we get to some things you hadn't considered if you visit a rare book room or you're part of a special organization that has a behind the scenes tour, which we do a lot at the Manuscript Society. So with that, we're gonna fire it right up. If you have questions, there's a section for questions where you can either raise your hand, and you can see the little hand raising spot there on your control panel. It's a little hand like this, and it's got an arrow that either looks down or an arrow that goes up. It's kind of counterintuitive, but if you put your hand up and down a little bit, you'll be able to see it. We don't have your cameras on, so if you're in your jammies, that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to write a question, you can put it in the question column. I will do that. We may not stop to do it right away or instantly, but we'll make sure that all your questions are answered or at least addressed in the best way we can before the evening's out. That's about it. I'm going to type into the chat section for the entire audience my cell phone number, 256-6119. If you have any tech questions or tech challenges, let's call it that, you can text me. I'd rather you didn't call me because I won't be able to pick up, but I will be able to respond. So that's my cell phone number. If you're having some tech challenges, my cell phone's right here. And I guess we're ready to rock and roll. Brad, thanks so much for coming out tonight. I know you are jammed up, got a lot going on, but we're so delighted you joined us tonight.
There was no problem. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay. So here's the story. Where are we? My next slide. Come on, slide. You can do this. Welcome, and we'll let you know that we're sponsored. This whole thing is sponsored by the Manuscript Society, which is a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3, that is part of its mission is to educate the world about history, manuscripts, the importance of manuscripts. We help in the preservation and the care of them, and we offer a lot of educational opportunities associated with learning about manuscripts, rare books, documents, historical items, things along those lines. Why a webinar? Well, it's the best way to reach the most amount of people in the easiest and most inexpensive way. This is probably going into our second year of Manuscript Mondays, and we're hoping to continue it and keep it going. Why now? Why not? First Monday seems to be like a good time to do it, and there's so much to know, there's so much to learn. This is a part of your continuing education program. If you have one with your particular organization, we'll have a certificate of attendance if you attend the entire time that you'll be able to download. We've invited pretty much everybody we know. This is a mailing list from National Appraisal Consultants. I'm the managing partner of an appraisal firm, and we have a lot of clients and a lot of friends, and we also have a lot of fellow appraisers that we run educational programs for, and one of them is something related to this. What are we going to cover? Well, we'll get to that in just a little bit. And what where can you get more information? This will be recorded, as I said, and if you can go to the Manuscript Society site, I'll give you that link before the night's out, and you'll be able to watch it again if you want, download any information that you might need, and you'll have all of Bradley's contact information too as well. So what are we going to cover? Well, one of the many privileges of being part of an organization are these behind the scenes tour, and usually executive directors or presidents of organizations are able to create some kind of tour at a museum. We have a local museum in our town, and we run programs there. We go down to New Jersey's got a lot of great museums. I'm from New Jersey, so we go down to the Edison Historic Site and meet with our friends down there. And most groups that are history related in some fashion or another, or some educational organization, get a chance to get behind the scenes. What we don't always know or always remember is there's certain etiquette, things that we're expected to do, more importantly, things that we're expected not to do. So knowing what's expected of us will allow us to get invited back, so they don't say nasty things about us after we leave. And that's why we have Brad Cook tonight, because he certainly knows the ins and outs of this, and we're delighted to have him as part of it. I'm gonna let you read his bio. I won't read it, and then we can move on from there. So take a look and see why Bradley is certainly the guy to be here tonight. So Brad, I have a question for you on your bio, if I may.
Sure.
As a curator, it says you're increasing the size of the repository. Do you go out and look for images? Do you request that alumni send images? Professors, are they involved? How does that process work for you?
Yes, we do get with alumni about donating, more than just photographs. Almost anything dealing with Indiana University that they may have kept from their days as a student, or maybe they have things that their parents or grandparents or great grandparents had that have been passed down through the family. So we're always looking for things like that. And then I'm always looking for photographers who maybe they worked on the student newspaper or the yearbook, or maybe they just shot photographs when they were a student. So yeah, in the years I've been there, we've been able to bring in some pretty large photograph collections to increase the size, and a little bit on the scope of what we have.
And do alum come and researchers come to see the photographs? Do you allow people to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the internet, most of what happens now is somebody's looking for a photograph or photographs, and if they're not already in our online collection, I will look for them, and then I'll get them scanned and put into our online collection so that they can then look at them. I can then give each of those photographs they were looking for a special code. It's called a patron code. And then I can send them a link to just that patron code so that they don't have to go searching through the whole online collection for all the photographs they wanted. I can just send them a link. They click on the link and they see the photographs that I found for them.
Oh, that's great. So, very cool. Oh, good. Good. Thanks for that. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the basics, and it's stuff we all know. We're going to start off with that, and you're going to go, yeah, I know this. Yeah, I know this. Do I have to sit through the whole thing? It'll get better. And you might find some things that you just need a little reminder. After that, we're going to talk about performing like a pro, a professional archivist, a professional curator, a professional researcher, and what's expected of you if you have the incredible opportunity to get behind the scenes. How do you handle books? How do you handle manuscripts, works of art, and artifacts? Gloves or no gloves? When do you wear them? When don't you wear them? And what kind of gloves are there? What about photographs? Brad's going to help us a lot with photographs. Pencils, pens, markers, Sharpies, paint brushes and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. What's allowed, what's not. Museum policies and guidelines. They change from museum institution to different institution. So understanding how do you find what the museum policies are going to be important. And planning ahead for your trip. Are there things you want to bring with you? Are there things you want to leave behind? And lastly, how do you make the most of your visit? So with that, we'll talk about, we've been to so many amazing places over the years with the Manuscript Society. Some of them are incredibly detailed and involved. Sometimes we get to touch and handle things. Other times we get to look and learn about what's going on, from archaeological digs to the Library of Congress, to getting into the Capitol behind the scenes, to museums, whether they be living history museums or more static displays. And one of my favorites, the Museum of the American Cocktail, is the place we went to. We were down in New Orleans, which turned out to be quite an interesting visit. So let's go with the basics, and we'll get Brad to talk a little more about this. Al Green says, let's stay together. And one of the most important things about going with a group is staying with your group. We're going to ask you not to wander off, not to lag behind, not to forge ahead of your tour guide. Brad, things to add about that, things that you would like people to do or not do as far as being with a group?
The biggest thing I've always noticed is don't wander off. Don't start to wander off down an aisle somewhere where they have their stacks with their shelves of boxes, etc. Stay with the group. Don't wander off. When you wander off, some people start to get suspicious of what you're doing. So anymore, if you have a very large group, what museums will tend to do is break you up, and they'll into 2 or 3 smaller groups, and then one person from that repository will take you in one part of the museum, another one in another area, and then they'll switch off. And that way you don't have 40 people being led by one person that person can't possibly see, especially when you're walking down aisles with boxes and stairways, etc. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things. Don't wander off. And I think a little bit later we're going to talk about this a bit more. And not opening boxes. Don't see a box that is labeled with something that you're interested in, say, ooh, and open up that box. And that's not what you want to do.
Got it. Yeah, just because you're behind the scenes doesn't mean you have carte blanche to do anything you want while you're there, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, good deal. Where am I here? Let's go to the next slide here too. The next one is not as staying together, but obey the signs and respect the barriers. Just because you're behind the scenes doesn't mean that you can go to other areas where it says staff only and employees only or whatever. Those little barriers are there for a reason. Anything to add on that, Brad, or do we cover most of that?
I think that's pretty good. I would just say, when in doubt, don't go up, even if those stairs don't say staff only, or if there's you see the little barrier here in front of the table. It's obvious you can't wander past those areas, but if you're in doubt, just don't wander.
Good point. That's the Hanover Tavern, by the way, down in Virginia, where we were just about 2 weeks ago. This is Ken Rendell's museum of World War II museum up in Natick, Massachusetts. We were there a couple of years back when we were on our Boston conference. Thoughts, Brad, about artifacts and things along those lines?
Right. Well, when you're in a place like this, you see the pictures you see here, a lot of stuff is sitting out. So, in most of these types of places, they will tell you beforehand what you can and can't touch. A lot of museums nowadays will have a little sign that says that you can touch, or it'll have a don't touch sign. I would say again, when in doubt, don't touch. If the person giving you the behind the scenes tour is nearby, ask them if you can touch that item or not. Like the museum you're seeing here, the World War II museum, I remember that there was a lot of stuff sitting out that you could literally walk right up to, and it didn't seem that there was anything stopping you from touching anything. But best practice is if you're not sure, at least ask. Good point.
Good deal. Thanks. Good. How about this one?
Yeah. Inside voices to me is kind of obvious, but the big one here is the second bullet point, the no sidebar conversations. I've been in these types of groups before where there are, sometimes there are 1 or 2 or 3 people near the back of your group, and they see something or they start talking and they start to get a little bit louder than the person that's giving the tour and telling you what you're looking at. So it's kind of rude, obviously. So try not to do that. And if you must have a sidebar conversation with somebody in your group, just keep it short and keep it very quiet. And then, yeah, the third bullet point, obviously, keep your cell phones on silent, and try not to answer the phone. If somebody's trying to contact you, just call them back when you get out of the museum, or at least when you're out of the behind the scenes tour part of your.
For sure, yeah. And we forget that. It's interesting. We all know we should do that as far as silencing or turning off our cell phones. But the amazing thing is when the first one goes off, everybody grabs their phone and then turns theirs off because we all forgot to do it. So it's just a good thing to remember. And inside voices are, we kind of tell that to kids too, but we see it as well. As I age and become more mature, I find that my hearing isn't as good. So any kind of distraction that distracts me from the speaker is something that we really should be aware about. Go ahead.
And again, there are many museums that will ask you to silence your phone before you come in into a behind the scenes tour like that. So
yep, that's it. That's Jay, one of our board members, who's down at William and Mary and gave us an incredible tour. The trombone player is my buddy Art Charlton, who has never brought that to a museum and hopefully never will. I actually was in a museum once and there was something going on in the background and the guy said, well, I'm just listening to the game. So could you just, we're listening to the speaker. So I put that one in there going, yeah, that really happened too. And look how well behaved that group is with Jay.
I saw somebody doing that once and you could actually hear the game through their earphones.
I know, it's amazing. Okay, food, smoke, drinks, gum. No food, no drinks, no gum, no candy. No smoking, no toking, no vaping. And by the way, candy and snacks are food. And Brad, you had said something when we were chatting earlier about ways to kind of remember this, or things that you should do or shouldn't do.
Right. Well, at most museums and manuscript repositories, rare book areas, that you'll see that particular sign as you're walking into the place. So that's pretty standard at almost any place you're going to go to, that you have to get rid of that food and the drink, etc. Basically as you're entering the lobby. So you'll have to put it in a locker or throw it away, etc. So, but if you're one of those people that likes to keep a can of Coke in their back pocket or some candy in their jacket, then try to be careful about that. And if you forget it's on you, definitely don't take it out and consume it while you're on a tour like that.
There you go. On occasion, there will be areas that are set up where they have a little reception for us. And down in Williamsburg just recently, we were over at William and Mary, and we had an opportunity to have some wine and cheese and some soft drinks there. But there was an area for that. But if you weren't thinking about it, you could easily take your glass of wine and walk back to where the lecture was going on, or walk back to where the display was. And I have no idea who it is, and even if I knew, I wouldn't say. Somebody took their glass of wine and put it down on the chair next to them in the area where we had a lot of manuscripts out. You could spill it on the carpet. So think about where you are, and just because there's something there that is offered, understand that should stay in that area.
That's right.
So, good.
Absolutely.
Good. Great. You talked about those little signs, Brad. There's some of them right there. Tell us about those.
Yeah, you're seeing this more and more at museums and at the I forget which venue we were at, but they had the signs that said that you could touch the letter, the actual letter. Of course, they had it in Mylar, which is good. You're far less likely to damage it if it's in Mylar. So they had those out and you could touch them. And then they had other things that they didn't want you touching. You could walk right up to it and look at it, but as you see in the slide here, the do not touch sign, there was something like that. And then there are some where it says you can photograph the item if you want, and others where you can't photograph. And and I think we talk about this later, but in most places they'll tell you, we even do it at the Indiana University Archives, that you can bring your cell phone into the reading room with you, and you can take pictures of letters and other documents, you just cannot use your flash. And that's
Got it.
pretty standard at most places.
Yeah. So that folder up in the upper right-hand corner, the Touch Me folder, you said they're in Mylar, but is there a way, that doesn't mean we can manhandle or woman handle them, correct?
Well, that's right. You can't just take it and, fling it around in your hand. It's just meant for you to pick up and read the letter and turn it over and read the other side if there's something on the verso there. But it's a way to protect that letter and still allow somebody that's there to actually pick it up, and they can still say they held that George Washington letter,
Sure.
et cetera.
Yeah.
So
good point. Good deal. Great. Okay, let's get beyond the basics and talk a little bit about photographs and photography. And just so you know, in the lower right, the person taking that picture of the photograph had permission to take that picture of the photograph. The Patrick Henry is there on the left, and we could take pictures. We're allowed to take pictures of Patrick Henry, but we also saw the no photograph sign. And tell us a little bit why those policies are in place, Brad.
well, I think it varies, but usually, like in the case where the man is taking the picture of the painting here, in that same museum, there was another painting that they did not allow us to take a picture of, and that's because it was actually on loan from a family for an exhibit that was coming up. So it did not belong to the museum. So they take the best practice of not allowing people to take pictures of it. And because, if you, depending on the camera you're using, you could get nice enough, a good enough quality to where you could make reproductions and sell them. And maybe the people just don't want that to happen. And there could be a whole slew of other reasons why, but that tends to be the reason that museums will not allow you to take a photograph of something like that, of a painting or photographs, for instance. They might not belong to them, or they don't want them being reproduced and sold, et cetera, et cetera.
Got it. Good point. And actually, this one sign we were in Richmond said explained why you couldn't photograph it. It was a loaned artifact or loaned artifacts, right, or something that had been restricted by whoever made a donation or things along those lines. So right, another reason to just keep a look at that too.
And the reason they tell you not to use the reason they tell you not to use flash is because light damage is cumulative to documents. That's why, if a document is on exhibit in a particular repository, it's usually only on an exhibit for a relatively short amount of time. And that's because light damage is cumulative. You cannot reverse it. It's not like it goes on exhibit for 3 months and then goes in a drawer for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and it's back to what it looked like before the exhibit. Sure. Those kinds of things, and the lights they're using in exhibits are better nowadays, but we still don't want people using a flash, just because the more people that shoot that thing with a flash, it does degrade the document.
And some inks are way more sensitive to ultraviolet light and flashes than others, I imagine.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Brian.
I said certain inks are more susceptible to ultraviolet light fading and flash fading, I would imagine.
It's not my area, but that sounds plausible.
Thomas Edison's purple ink signature on his checks. We know just from personal horrible experience where I lent one to a buddy of mine that had a stamp shop, and he put it in the window, and about 3 weeks later we came back and it was unsigned check by Thomas Edison. So yeah. And we didn't do that anymore. So how about personal items and clothing and things along those like that should be with us or not with us?
Yeah, that's a major thing as well, because especially with any kind of handbags, purses, backpacks, it makes it easier if somebody were there for some nefarious reason to steal something. It gives them a place to put it. So usually when you come into any kind of repository like an archives or a rare book and manuscripts, they're going to ask you to put those handbags, purses, and backpacks, and most other things that you bring in with you into a locker, and then just what you are allowed to take in our thing, like at the university archives, and I'm sure other places are like this. You can bring paper, pencil, no pens. We also allow people to bring in a laptop, and they can bring in their iPhone,
Sure.
and we tell them that they can take pictures, but again, no flash.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good deal. Great.
Um,
Scarves, things that can hang down, it can get in the way. We asked the Marquis de Lafayette to please leave his sword and his walking stick aside before he came into the museum with us. And the upper right-hand corner is where all the handbags went when people walked into the conservation lab, and our hostess said, "You mind putting those in the corner? We really shouldn't be dragging those around." And it was more so
right.
they didn't knock things over, not that someone was going to stuff something into their handbag. We're certainly a trustworthy group, but the fact
Right.
that that's hanging on your shoulder or scarf is in the way. Umbrellas, I've seen people bring wet umbrellas into places that shouldn't be close to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing too. Good.
Right.
Other hanging items? Eyeglasses,
Right.
pens, pocket items. Yep.
Right. You see the pictures that Brian has in his slide here, the man with the tie, and the tie is touching some kind of document there. And then you see at the lower right there, the glasses and the pen in the pocket. Well, if you go to lean over, sometimes those things fall out, and they can scratch or otherwise damage items. So when you're going into a behind the scenes tour like that, and if they've asked you to put things in a locker or in a corner like we saw a moment ago, might be a good idea to wear a tie clip or stuff that tie inside your shirt, take that pen and those glasses out of your pocket and set them off to the side, or carry them. Well, and that's bad because he has a pen.
Yeah, yep.
So yeah, put those things off to the side. Yeah, some people have long necklaces, jewelry, or really loose uh, uh, watches and
Sure. Yep.
things of that nature. Some
Hmm.
watches I've even seen have little chains on them. So you need to kind of watch that stuff. And most places will ask you if they see something happening like that to maybe take your watch off and put it in your pocket, or put your necklace down in your shirt or something like that.
Yep.
But
And our
it's
hosts and
most a
hostess
good
will
thing.
notice that, and they'll certainly let you know when you're doing it right. Most people say, "Hey, thanks for being ready to go." The one thing that kills me are the badges that we wear, and in most organizations have some kind of a hanging badge,
Right.
and we can watch people lean over. You can just see a corner of that badge getting close to a document, and as you move
Mm.
back and forth, you're scraping your name badge across a document signed by Button
Yeah.
Gwinnett, the rarest signer of the Declaration of Independence, or something along those lines. All righty.
Right.
Okay, let's go pro. Meaning, if you were coming in there and people you want to look like a pro and you want to get invited back, here are some things that you may want to. You just want to run down that list for us, Brad? Tell me what you think.
Uh, sure. First point: if you are permitted to handle, if you are permitted to handle manuscripts, just do it gently. If they give you specific instructions on how to handle and what to do or not to do, then just follow those. Again, do not touch unless you must. Then make sure they have the sign there that says you can. If there are no signs, ask first. Which brings us to the third: ask about the policy and process. Yeah, clean, dry hands. Some places, depending on where you're going, will ask you to go to the bathrooms and wash your hands. Some places, as you walk in, I've been in a few places where they have a sink right there as you walk in the door, and you can wash your hands there. Yeah. Do you need to wear gloves or not? They will let you know if you need to wear gloves if you're handling things. Using the proper tools. There are some places, I think we'll see one here in a moment, where they're using a bone tool. It's about so long, and they use that to help turn pages of things. Some people will use it's called a spatula, but it's not like your kitchen spatula. It's a little metal thing. And then using proper technique. Again, if you're in a behind the scenes tour, most of the time they're probably not going to hand you any tools to turn pages with. That's something that the archivists will do, and usually if that's happening, that's going to be one of those documents that you're not allowed to touch.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if they do give you tools and tell you the proper technique, then just be sure you follow those to the T.
Good deal. Great. I always bring a loop with me, a little magnifier, because I like to look at ink and
Yeah.
paper because we do so
Right.
much ink and paper analysis. I always ask, I explain that the loop will never touch the paper. Would that be
Yep.
okay? And
I always
no
have a
one's ever
loop
said no.
as well.
Say again? You
I
said
always have a loop with me as well.
it's always good. Good. Hey, let's talk about gloves.
Okay. Yeah, gloves are important, and I decided that when I was talking about this, it wouldn't just be about behind the scenes, but if you're actually working in an archives, you get the standard white cotton gloves they're not bleached. So if you do have them washed or you take them home to wash, just wash them. Do not use any bleach. Do not use any fabric softener. Just get them washed. There are different types of gloves. There are the standard white cotton gloves. There are these, they're called nitrile gloves, and those are especially good if you're handling photographs and negatives. And then they make other specialty gloves as well, even gloves if you are handling silver, for instance. I just jotted down the two places you can buy most of these types of archival supplies, gloves in this case, is Hollinger Metal Edge is one company. There used to be two different companies, Hollinger and Metal Edge, and they got together and merged. And then there's Gaylord also. Both places sell great archival supplies, and they both sell 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of gloves. So, and if you're in the behind the scenes tour and they ask you to wear gloves to handle certain things, then wear the gloves. Or if for some reason some people are allergic to some gloves, the rubber in the gloves, then just tell them that you're allergic and that you're not going to handle anything. So.
And most places are suggest that you don't wear gloves when you're handling manuscripts. And I just put some things up here.
That's
but
right.
Tell us a little more about that and why the no glove policy is probably most advantageous to protecting documents.
Right. Most places will only have you wear gloves anymore if you're handling artifacts or photographs and negatives. It used to be for a while there, archival repositories, rare book and manuscript libraries as well would have you wear the white cotton gloves if you were looking at rare books, even if you had the book in a rest and you were turning the pages, or if you were holding documents. Well, most places have gotten away from that because they have found that people that are wearing those gloves, it's harder to turn the pages, it's harder to turn documents around, and they found that more damage was being done to those items with people wearing gloves than when they were not. So usually you'll find in general that you don't have to wear gloves anymore when you're looking at those types of items, but you will always wear them when you're looking at photographs and negatives. And then if you are being allowed to hold artifacts, depending on what the artifact is, they may ask you to wear gloves as well. So
good point. Thanks. Good deal. Talk about those. Okay, now we're in your area of specialty. Let's talk a little bit about handling photographs.
Well, with photographs, yeah, I'll go through some of these bullet points, but the biggest thing I would have to say is yes, if you are going to be allowed to during a behind the scenes tour, or even if you're there researching, you are going to be expected to wear gloves while handling photographs, negatives, transparencies, positive transparencies, etc. Any kind of photographic image, you're probably going to be wearing gloves. And unless it's only a few photographs you're looking at and they've already put those in Mylar or something, that might be the only case, but most of the time you're going to be wearing gloves. And then it's going to depend on what type of photograph or negative are you looking at. Obviously, if you're looking at glass plate negatives, you're going to have to be more careful. I've even been to places where they don't even let a photograph curator like myself hold the negatives. I even told them, I said, I am a photograph curator and I've handled glass plate negatives quite a bit, and they still will stand there and they will hold them for you and hold them up to the light table, etc. It's a
Wow.
little off-putting, but okay, it's, you know, it's all right. If you're holding, for instance, if you're, another thing, if you're holding albumin type photographs, so if you know what a CDV is or a cabinet card, and if you don't, let's assume you're looking at an old photograph and it's been mounted to some sort of hard backboard, not wood, but like a very stiff cardboard. Well, that's because it's probably an albumin print, and it was mounted that way because if you don't mount albumins to something stiff like that, they will curl up on you. Now, the only problem is that stiff backing over time has become brittle. So if you pick it up by a corner, you know, that corner is going to break off most likely. So you have to hold it with both hands when you're picking it up. And if you're in a behind the scenes tour and they have albumins there and they are allowing you to pick those up, then they're going to let you know to be sure to pick those up by both ends. And a lot of places will have that albumin already laying on something else that you're going to pick up.
Sure. Yeah.
So not foam core, but something along the lines of foam core. So that, and yeah, so there, you have those kinds of problems.
Good.
In general, you know, it's the glass plate items and the lantern slides that they're going to ask you to be the most careful with.
Sure.
And then things like albumins, etc. So,
Good
but
deal.
yes, again, just like we were talking about before, again, don't touch unless you were told you can. Ask about the best policies. Again, you're not going to have pens or markers in any of these places. That's very standard nowadays. Pencils is about it. Clean hands. You know, I've been in places where they don't ask you to wash your hands, and that's probably because you're not going to touch anything. In places where they are going to let you touch things, they're much more likely to ask you to wash your hands.
Sure.
Gloves, when it comes to the photographs and prints, the white cotton gloves are fine. A lot of people are going to the nitrile gloves because you do get a little bit more feel, and you're less likely to, you get a little bit more of a grip with the nitrile, I should say.
I see.
And there's also static dissipating gloves also for when you're handling negatives in particular.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
tell us about the static problem. If you're on a negative, that'll impact the emulsion?
Well, I guess it could impact the emulsion, yes. But it's, you know, you're always, if you're working with your negatives, they're always gathering dust, and that's because they have a little bit of static, so it's attracting that dust. And if you're wearing the white cotton gloves, then you're much more apt to leave some of that white cotton residue behind.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
In general, so
that makes sense. I was thinking about a spark that would do something in the albumin. I wasn't thinking about dust from that standpoint. Oh, that makes good sense. Good.
And again, the same thing, the proper tools and techniques. Usually, if you're looking at photographs and negatives, they're not going to give you any kind of tools. I mean, I really don't use any tools at the archives. We have a few things that we use from time to time, but in general, when it comes to handling, the only tool if you want to call it that, are the gloves. So
sure. Good. Great. Good. Manuscripts are a lot of the same, but let's just run through that. Tell me what things that might be the same or different about handling manuscripts in paper.
Right. Well, again, most places aren't going to make you wear gloves anymore if you're in there doing research. And again, we went over the reasons why. If you're going in to do research, again, it's just going to be you bringing in paper, pencils, not pens or markers, but pencils, your laptop, your iPhone, if they allow you to take pictures, as long as you're not using the flash. Some places will give you paper, because they want to, they basically want to control that. If you bring in a large notebook, even if you're not bringing in your backpack, you could slip something into that notebook. So some places will give you paper. They might even count how many pieces they're giving to you and then count those when you come out, those sorts of things. But you had a good story about the Nixon archives, I remember.
Right. Yeah.
About why you can.
Yeah, we were the appraisers of the Nixon Watergate papers, 40 million documents, and they were down in Suitland, Maryland, where they built the building to house all of these things. And when we came in to do research, which went on for months, we were told no yellow line pads. And this was before the days of, everybody bringing laptops in. And the reason there was no yellow line pads is because Ehrlichman, who was part of the Nixon administration and who kept copious notes, did everything on yellow line pads. He tore paper off, he'd make a copy. If it was about Neil Armstrong, they put it in the NASA file, the space race, the Cold War file, and they were all copied, but the originals were on yellow line paper. So they said no yellow line pads allowed in the building. And they gave us separate paper like this. This is at the William & Mary Research Center, Library Research Center, where they put out number 2 pencils and the paper that you're supposed to use when you're doing research too. So good point, Brad. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little, let's see. Yeah, you were talking about some of the tools. I thought I'd share this. And
yeah. So here,
the one you had mentioned
here
before.
in particular, they're using the same tool in all 3 images, but it's called a bone tool, and it's used for several things. But in this case, they're showing you how they're using it to get a start on turning the page of this. It looks like a newspaper to me. And there are also metal spatulas, which have a pointed spatula at one end and a rounded spatula at the other. And they're very small. They're no bigger than I don't know, 7 or 8 inches long. And they're no bigger than the width of your finger. They're even smaller than that. So you will see archival repositories using some of these tools. And here again, this person was at this repository was using this tool to turn the page for us. So this was probably something that we were not allowed to touch, would be my guess.
Good deal. But nice to know if you see it or somebody asks about it. Now you have something in your vocabulary that can you'll know a little more about that too. Books. You lots and lots of books. These are some pretty old books here. They have their catalog numbers in their in the little bookmark area there too. Tell us a little bit about. Well, let me just go to the next slide here, Brad, and you can tell us a little more about books.
Well, when it comes to books, if you're in the repository doing research, they are going to pull the book off the shelf for you. It's probably not even in the same room that you are in, which is a reading room. Now, a lot of reading rooms have a lot of reference books on shelves in their reading room. And at some places, like here at Indiana University's Lilly Library, for instance, if I've been in there doing research on something and they're getting another book for me, I can get up and I can go pull a reference book off the shelf. But the rare books, they're usually bringing those in for you, and they will bring it to your table and they will put it in the book rest for you, and they'll give you some weights to hold the pages when you're reading the pages, so they don't flip back on you. So with books, in most cases, you're not going to be handling the book. You might not handle it at all. They'll put it in the cradle there for you, and all you're going to be doing is turning the pages. And then they'll instruct you that when you're done to let them know. They will come and get the book, and they'll bring you the next book that you might be interested in.
Okay, good. These are my grubby little hands in my own library in our office here. Apparently removing the book the wrong way, Brad.
Right. Well, you can see Brian's finger in that picture on the left. He's about to, and everybody does it. I still do it here at my own house. You'll put your finger up there to get that book pulled out, and then you pull it off the shelf. That's really not the right way to do it, because here it's over time, it's very easy to damage the spine of the book. And I think in Brian's next, he shows you really how the way to do it, best way to do it is to push either book on either side of the one you want to the back. Then you can pull the book you want off the shelf.
Good deal. Okay, what about flipping pages? I know it's one of your pet peeves.
Well, yeah, I mean, the repositories will instruct you how to turn those pages. They don't want you, kind of hard to show here, what they don't want you doing, here, I'll try and do it. They don't want you grabbing this page like I am right now and doing this. See how I'm pushing that down to get it started? They don't want you doing that. What they usually want you doing is getting your finger started back here like this and then doing it that way. And they will instruct you on how to do that. And of course, yes, you're not licking your fingers to turn the pages. You're not dog-earing the pages. If you're going to lunch and coming back, you're not doing any of those things. But again, the repository will tell you what they want you to do. Usually they will instruct you on the proper way to turn the page, and some of these other things, not dog earing and not licking your fingers, because some people do that. They have a bad habit of licking their finger to turn a page, and you can't do that in a rare book repository.
Got it. Good deal. Gloves for, we talked a little bit about gloves for books, but for protecting the books, what about gloves for protecting the researcher?
Well, again, if it's a book, they're probably not going to have you wear gloves, first of all.
Right.
And if you do have this, if there is this frass problem or bug poop in the books, usually they've cleaned those types of things before. A lot of times before it's even cataloged, or if it's some kind of book they have a problem with over the decades, they'll keep an eye on it and they'll keep it as clean as possible. I suppose there could be cases where they will ask you to wear gloves because maybe there is some sort of problem that they can't fix.
Yeah, and you'll find that if you're,
because it's not my area, but
yeah, and but I'm thinking particularly for appraisers that are going into to look at collections that have not been properly cared for. And actually,
yeah.
I was someplace today where that happened, and I had a mask on just because it was COVID, but I want to have a respirator on and gloves and a Tyvek suit when I went into this one room. So be aware that manuscripts, old papers, and books could also have some hazardous materials associated.
Oh, I've been in places where I definitely wore gloves because it was just nasty, dirty.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Dead bugs, dead, rodent feces, etc. Sometimes it's not very pleasant when you're in some of those places.
What a job,
boxing up a collection, No, I've been in some pretty horrible places.
And those are all, you isolate those and pretty much quarantine those books from all the other books so you can go through them and then properly care for them. And
books or manuscripts, usually if you've gone into a place and you've come across just something that's horrible, it doesn't even come to the archives first. It goes over to preservation. They do all the cleaning, et cetera, and get it back to you once they're done.
Good deal. Okay, a couple more things. We're privileged guests. We have been invited into somebody's home, into a special place. It really is an opportunity for us. And remember, when you go there, you represent your organization. So help others understand what this is all about. Help others know if you see something that isn't quite right, you can very gently, quietly remind somebody to tuck their tie in, or to tuck the little jewelry away, or to take their badge off, or to, you don't have to give them the mom look or the dad look if they got their cell phone going. But we want to invite it back, right? And then more importantly, some people are known for doing really stupid things. So we're saying, don't be that guy. And if you've been watching the news, somebody threw cake at the Mona Lisa not too long ago. And luckily the Mona Lisa was under glass. Brad and I were talking about this before, and make sure that you're doing the right stuff. Brad, we're going to open up the questions, but any thoughts before we move on to that?
Not at this point. I would say if we have questions, let's take questions.
Good deal. All right, let me go to this. Just a quick reminder, July's Manuscript Monday is on a Tuesday because July 4th is a holiday. Our special guest is going to be Melissa Wynn. She's the director of photography for Civil War Times, America's Civil War, American History Magazine, and she's going to talk about dead letter office images of the Civil War. Pretty much she's going to share a lot of letters didn't make it to soldiers, and a lot of letters and pictures from soldiers didn't make it back home. And a lot of them ended up in the dead letter office, and she has tons of images and pictures and some incredible stories that she'll share with us next time. And with that, let me tell you that there's going to be a certificate of attendance. As soon as this webinar is over, check your email. You're going to get a thank you email, and there's going to be an attachment. It's going to take a long time to download. I've been arguing with GoToWebinar people about making this happen faster. Just click on download, let it run, go for a cup of coffee, come on back. If you have trouble, you have my email through this webinar registration. I'll help you download it. We don't send it to anybody. Make copies, send it to your appraisal organizations, your society organizations, your educational institutions. It'll be an important thing to do. Watch the webinar anytime. In about 2 weeks, it's going to be up on the Manuscript Society website. I'll give you that link in just a little bit. And thank you, especially to Brad. We're going to stay around for questions because that's the most fun part about everything here too. And thanks to the trustees and staff of the Manuscript Society for making it happen, and for you for showing up, and especially to Brad Cook, who took some time to be with us tonight. With that, if you're not a Manuscript Society member, here's how you do it. Go to manuscript.org and you can have access to all of our member benefits right there. It's manuscript.org. And with that, let's open it up to questions. If you have a question, you can type it in the question box, or you can just raise your hand and I'll respond. Judy Merritt. Judy, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask Brad about lantern slides, which you had a question. I'm going to unmute you, Judy. You're going to have to unmute yourself too if you're there. There you go. Go ahead, Judy.
I just wanted to know what a lantern slide was.
Well, a lantern slide, if you can imagine, for instance, a glass plate negative, okay? They're right about 4 by 5, and it is a positive image. So it looks like a photograph, only you can see through it. And they used to have, well, first they used to use them in movie theaters, for instance. That's where the ads came from. There are people that collect lantern slides, and some of them have all kinds of old advertisements on them that would be projected onto the screen. Other lantern slides, there were lantern slide shows. So a lot of children in the late 19th century, early 20th century had lantern slide shows, and they were all kinds of different shows. You'd probably have things even like the Wizard of Oz, or where you'd see I don't know if there was Wizard of Oz, but you would see different images from the story. There are all kinds of lantern slides. We have hundreds of them at the university archives that just show images of buildings on campus. Somebody must have had them made into a lantern slide from the original photograph, and then they could be projected onto the screen. Just imagine, like I remember in the 70s, my dad showing us the 35mm slides from our trips, and other family members doing the same. Imagine the same thing, only with a much larger slide in this big projector called a magic lantern.
Magic lantern.
Exactly, magic lantern. It would project the image onto the wall or a screen.
Well, thank you.
If you just do a Google search for lantern slides and then look at the images, they're countless. There are thousands and thousands of different types. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal. Good question, Judy. Thanks so much. Other questions? If people have questions now, I'm gonna mute you, Judy. Other questions? Thoughts for Brad? Write them down. Craig Sperling says thanks for the webinar. And so, where can people get more information on proper handling of this, Brad? Is there a place? Does your organization have a YouTube video, or do you have policies? Where would people find typically find policies for museum visitations and things like that?
Well, the best place is to check with that museum's website, wherever you're going, to see what they allow, what they don't allow. Most of them will not talk about behind the scenes tours. But
Mhm.
if you know, let's say you're going on vacation and you want to go to this particular repository and you love it behind the scenes, send them an email and tell them that you're coming in from out of town. It's, you know, it's 2 or 3 of you or 4 of you. Is there any way we can get a behind the scenes tour? I would think that most places would be more than willing to do that.
Mhm.
So it's not as if one repository has the rules for all the others. Most places have pretty much the same policies. But yeah, if you want to get a behind the scenes tour, then that's the best thing to do. If you're going there to do research, definitely get a hold of them ahead of time, and tell them that you're going to be in town. You want to see a particular collection or a particular box from a collection, because a lot
Mhm.
of these places, like even us at the Indiana University Archives, a lot of our materials are stored at off-site storage facilities.
Oh, I see. Sure.
So they have to be recalled. So we always tell people to give us at least 1 or 2 days, because if I recall something today, for instance, it will be here the next day. It just depends on what time. So for instance, if
Sure.
I recall anything from off-site storage after 12 and before 10:30 the next morning, it will come in the morning delivery. And if
Oh,
I
wow.
recall anything between 10:30 and noon, it will come in the afternoon delivery. So at some repositories, it's longer than that. Some
Mhm.
repositories, they have what you need right on site. And we have a lot of stuff on site too, particularly the photographs. But
Sure.
every repository is different. So contact them, let them know you're coming in. You just can't walk into a place. If you were to walk into our place and say you want to see 3 boxes from a particular collection, we'd say, well, I'm sorry, they're stored off site. I can recall them and they'll be here tomorrow. So
Got
your
it.
best bet is to do that all in advance, at least 1 or 2 or 3 days in advance.
Great. John's got a question. John, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask Brad directly. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right. Come on, John. You got to unmute yourself there, John. And if you can't, don't worry. I'll ask your question. And so I got you unmuted, but you have to do it on your end, John, if you can. I don't know. So John asks, is there a good beginner book on how to study and observe historical photos, Brad?
Well, if you go to the Society of American Archivists site, there are a couple of books about 19th century photography and early 20th century photography. I don't have the titles right on the tip of my tongue, but Society of American Archivists has those. I tell you what, John, if Brian, or if you want to write it down, I'll give you my email address, and if you send me an email tonight or tomorrow, I'll send you a list of some of those books, and a link to them. They're really good reading. They'll teach you a lot. I keep one at my desk because I refer to it every once in a while. You can't remember everything. And when I have students come in, depending on what they're working on, I'll have them read those books. So
Great. And if you
yeah.
what we can do also is Brad, if you have that list, I'll make it a document that can be a resource
Okay.
that'll go on the Manuscript Society website right next to
Okay.
your webinar
Right.
tonight too. So that'd be great. That's a great question.
So yeah, and if anybody's listening, I'll give it to you right now, and you can send me an email and let me know what you're interested in. I'll send you a link to those. So my email address is bcook@indiana.edu. That's bcook, B as in boy, bcook@indiana.edu.
And I'm going to send that to everybody who's on right now on the
Okay.
through the chat. So look for it on your chat, and you'll see Brad's email, bcook@indiana.edu. Good.
And I'll send those links out tonight, or most likely tomorrow morning when I get into the
Terrific.
office.
Good deal. All right. John says, thanks very much. I would
No
like to
problem.
volunteer for my small town museum. And I'm sure they would be delighted to have you, John. And that's a great way to get started, is to come with a little bit of experience. Keepers of Light is the one that stood out for me, Brad, that I remember, which I thought was a great book on the photography, the whole photographic process from the earliest types of prints. And I can't remember who did that, but
Right.
we'll talk about that.
And
And
there are all kinds of different processes for
yeah,
photographs.
for sure. Good deal. All right, we are going to wrap it up. We are 9 o'clock on the dot. Brad, thank you so much. It has been absolutely wonderful. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and I know you are just buried with so much work, and we're just so happy you took time to be with us
It was
tonight.
no
and share your
problem.
expertise.
No problem.
All right. Hope to see you soon.
I hope some people learn some things.
I know I certainly did. Very good. Thank you all so much. We'll see you July 5th, Manuscript Monday on a Tuesday, for Melissa Wynn and dead letter office images of the Civil War. Go to manuscript.org and get more info. Have a good night, y'all. Take care.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, sir.